Good evening, and welcome back to another journey through history's quieter corners. I'm Professor Somnus, and tonight we'll be exploring one of humanity's most enduring love affairs. The story of chocolate grows a tree whose seeds would one day comfort millions and spark empires. The cacao tree, Theobroma, cacao, literally, food of the gods, has been humanity's companion for over 3,000 years. Tonight, we'll trace its gentle path from sacred ritual to everyday solace, from bitter ceremonial drink to the smooth, sweet comfort we know today. Close your eyes, turn the page, and let history guide you to sweet dreams. We'll visit ancient temples where chocolate was currency, monastery kitchens where sugar first met cacao. In the humid lowlands of what we now call southern Mexico, the Olmec people move through dense jungle paths, their footsteps muffled by centuries of fallen leaves. They have discovered something remarkable growing wild in the forest canopy pods, hanging like ancient lanterns from the trunks of towering trees. Perhaps simply a curious soldi decided to experiment with those discarded seeds. They ground them on rough stone metatas, mixed them with water, and created the first chocolate drink in human history. Cacao beans were so valuable that they were often counterfeited. Crafters would hollow out clay replicas and fill them with mud, hoping to fool traders in busy marketplaces. A turkey might cost 100 cacao beans, while a single tomato could be purchased for just one bean. The preparation of his ceremonial chocolate would have taken hours. Cacao beans slowly ground on stone metates until they formed a thick paste, then mixed with water and whipped with wooden molinillos until foam crowned the surface like clouds. It was nothing like the chocolate we know today. The Maya believed that the feathered serpent Kukulkan had stolen cacao from the mountain where the gods kept all their food, bringing it to earth as a gift to humanity. This wasn't simply sustenance, it was divine grace made liquid, bitter, gritty, often mixed with chili peppers and served at room temperature. It was a drink that demanded reverence rather than pleasure. And quiet Swiss workshops where patient artisans stirred chocolate for days until it achieved impossible smoothness. In their settlements at San Lorenzo and La Venta, they created some of humanity's first chocolate vessels, pottery designed specifically for the preparation and consumption of cacao drinks. These vessels, discovered centuries later by archaeologists, still bear the residue of ancient chocolate ceremonies. In the misty highlands of ancient Mesoamerica, where morning fog clings to emerald canopies, let us begin this slow journey together, moving at the pace of history itself, where every transformation took not moments, but generations. Take a deep breath and settle in. Our story begins 4,000 years ago, in a world where chocolate was not sweet, but sacred, where it was not eaten, but drunk, where it connected mortals to gods and measured the wealth of empires. Tonight, we discover how this bitter drink of kings became the gentle comfort that soothes us still. Part 1. Ancient Origins. Picture, if you will, the year 1500 before the Common Era. The Olmecs, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, were the first to recognize the potential hidden within these leathery pods. When cracked open, each pod revealed rows of bitter seeds nestled in sweet white pulp. Archaeological evidence suggests these early peoples first consumed the pulp itself, savoring its tropical sweetness while discarding the bitter seeds we would later prize above all else. But somewhere in those misty centuries, an unknown Olmec, perhaps a priest, the Olmec chocolate priests, whose individual names are lost to time, developed elaborate rituals around this bitter beverage. As the Olmec civilization slowly faded into history, their knowledge of cacao passed to other peoples. The Maya inherited this sacred tradition around 600 CE. In the Maya creation myth, the gods formed humans from maize, but it was cacao that sustained their souls. Maya rulers, like Itzamni, Balam II, who reigned in the city of Yaxuan around 681 CE, commissioned elaborate chocolate ceremonies that could last for days. The Maya developed the first sophisticated cacao currency system. This monetary system was so reliable that it persisted for over 1,000 years, continuing even after the Spanish conquest. Presided over elaborate chocolate tribute ceremonies. In some areas, they added vanilla orchid pods. The grinding of cacao beans on stone metades created a rhythmic sound that echoed through temple complexes. The patient stirring required to create the perfect foam was considered a form of prayer. The serving of chocolate followed strict protocols, certain vessels for certain ceremonies, carried by traders and refugees who understood that they possessed something more valuable than any material treasure, the secret of transforming bitter seeds into divine sustenance. Specific temperatures for specific rituals, particular additives for particular gods, creating a complex floral aroma that filled temple courtyards during ceremonies. In others, they incorporated annatto seeds, turning their chocolate a deep red color that symbolized blood and sacrifice. Each city-state guarded its chocolate recipes as carefully as it protected its military secrets. Stone carvings from her reign show her receiving tribute payments that included carefully measured portions of cacao beans, each one counted and recorded by scribes who understood that they were handling currency more precious than gold. Chocolate ceremonies became increasingly elaborate. Entire buildings were dedicated to cacao preparation, with specialized rooms for grinding, mixing, and serving. The sound of chocolate being prepared, the scraping of stone on stone, the gentle splashing of liquid being poured from height to create foam. The soft chanting of priests became the soundtrack of Maya religious life. Her chocolate drinking vessels, crafted from the finest clay and decorated with jaguar motifs, were works of art that elevated the simple act of drinking chocolate into communion with the divine. Lady Sixth Sky, who ruled the Maya city of Naranjo from 682 to 741 CE. The Maya developed regional variations in their chocolate preparation. Maya chocolate preparation was a meditation in itself. As Maya civilization reached its classical peak, but their chocolate vessels remained scattered across temple floors like ceramic prayers, frozen in time. These vessels tell us that even as their civilization crumbled, the Maya continued their chocolate rituals, perhaps hoping that their devotion to this sacred drink might restore their connection to the gods who seemed to be withdrawing from the world. When Maya cities began their mysterious decline around 900 CE, many were simply abandoned. The knowledge of chocolate, however, did not die with the classic Maya cities. It traveled north. Part 2. Aztec reverence in the highland valleys of central Mexico, where morning mist rises from ancient lakes. The Aztec Empire built its magnificent capital of Tenochtitlan. Here, in the early 1500s, chocolate reached its most sacred expression under the reign of Moctezuma II. In the quiet darkness of his private chambers, servants would arrive carrying golden vessels, filled with chocolate, prepared according to recipes passed down through royal bloodlines. The emperor consumed his first cup while the city still slept. The feathered serpent god, who had gifted cacao to humanity, believing that chocolate connected him directly to Quetzalcoatl, a ruler whose devotion to cacao bordered on the mystical. Though not the famous 15th century nobleman of that name, the grinding process took hours. Cacao beans, transported from tropical regions through networks of tribute and trade. The beans were ground on massive stone methods that had been blessed by priests and carved with symbols of Quetzalcoatl, where it grew alongside the tree of life, with servants working in shifts to maintain the rhythmic motion that gradually transformed whole beans into smooth paste. They believed that Quetzalcoatl had discovered cacao growing in the paradise of the gods. Jealous of this divine food, the other gods had hidden cacao in a mountain fortress, but Quetzalcoatl transformed himself into an ant to steal the precious seeds and bring them to earth. But humans gained access to the food of the gods. For this act of divine theft, Quetzalcoatl was banished from paradise. This paste was then mixed with water that had been carried from sacred springs in the mountains, heated to specific temperatures that varied according to the intended spiritual purpose of each batch, were first sorted by hand under torchlight. Each bean was examined for imperfections, for only the most perfect specimens could touch the emperor's lips. The selected beans were then roasted over carefully controlled fires, the temperature monitored by servants who could judge the heat by holding their hands at precise distances from the flames, but rather his successor, who held the hereditary title of Chief Chocolate Priest. This position carried enormous responsibility. Tribute bearers would arrive at the capital carrying massive loads of cacao beans, each tribute carefully recorded by scribes, who understood that they were documenting payments in divine currency. The Emperor Nezahualcóyotl of neighboring Texcoco, a renowned poet who lived from 1402 to 1472, wrote verses comparing the arrival of cacao tribute to rivers of brown gold, flowing toward the heart of the world, for any mistake in preparation could be interpreted as an omen of disaster. The grinding of cacao beans for the emperor's daily consumption began each midnight, performed by specially trained servants who worked in absolute silence to avoid disturbing the chocolate's spiritual essence. Some were flavored with honey and vanilla, others with fierce chili peppers that made the emperor's eyes water. One particular blend, reserved for moments of deep contemplation, combined cacao with ground orchid petals and a pinch of precious salt carried from distant coastal regions. Moctezuma, born in 1466, began each day before dawn with a ritual that had remained unchanged for generations. The Aztecs had no knowledge of sugar, and they believed that cacao's natural bitterness was essential to its spiritual power. To sweeten chocolate would be to diminish its connection to the divine realm. Instead, they enhanced its complexity with spices that complemented rather than masked its earthy, bitter essence. Contemporary Spanish accounts describe Moctezuma drinking from 50 different golden goblets each day, each one containing a slightly different preparation of chocolate. The emperor's chocolate was never sweet. Moctezuma's daily chocolate consumption was not mere indulgence, it was statecraft. In Aztec belief, chocolate provided wisdom, courage, and the clarity of thought necessary to rule an empire. Before making any important decision, the emperor would retreat to his chocolate chambers, where he would slowly sip his sacred drink while contemplating the weight of his choices. His advisors learned to read the significance of his chocolate selections, while the addition of precious vanilla suggested he had found peace with his decisions. A particularly bitter blend meant he was wrestling with difficult problems. The preparation of imperial chocolate was overseen by the process was elaborate beyond imagination. Once roasted, the Aztec tribute system brought cacao to Tenochtitlan from regions hundreds of miles away. In Aztec mythology, chocolate held a place of honor in the creation story itself. They believed that Quetzalcoatl had discovered cacao growing in the paradise of the gods, where it grew alongside the tree of life. Jealous of this divine food, the other gods had hidden cacao in a mountain fortress, but Quetzalcoatl transformed himself into an ant to steal the precious seeds and bring them to Earth. Unlike modern hot chocolate, Aztec chocolate was typically served at room temperature or only slightly warmed. They believed that excessive heat would drive away the spiritual essence of the cacao, created by pouring chocolate from great heights or whisking it with carved wooden implements. He commissioned master craftsmen to create new chocolate vessels, where thousands of cacao beans were kept in perfect conditions. These storerooms were guarded as carefully as the imperial treasury, for everyone understood that cacao represented not just wealth, but the very foundation of Aztec spiritual life. The beans were organized by origin, with tribute from different regions kept separate to preserve their unique flavors and spiritual properties. A dark liquid that seemed to assault rather than please the palate. His sharp merchant's mind recognized something valuable in the reverence with which the Aztecs treated these humble beings. He observed how cacao functioned as currency, noted the elaborate rituals surrounding its preparation, and began to understand that he had encountered not merely a beverage, but the foundation of an entire economic and spiritual system. Maintaining diplomatic composure despite his revulsion, managed to swallow the sacred drink while his men struggled not to grimace at its harsh flavor. In his letters to King Charles V, would later describe it as a bitter water that seemed more suitable for washing than drinking, each one designed for specific ceremonies or spiritual purposes. They would find an empire built partly on chocolate, where the sacred drink of cacao touched every aspect of life, from the humblest market transaction to the most elaborate religious ceremony. But in these final years of his reign, Moctezuma still rose each dawn to greet the day with his golden vessels of chocolate, unaware that his empire's ancient relationship with this sacred drink was about to change forever. Some were used only during eclipses, others only when greeting foreign ambassadors. One particularly sacred vessel was reserved for the chocolate, consumed on the anniversary of Quetzalcoatl's theft of cacao from the Godza ceremony, so important that the entire empire would pause in respectful silence. This foam was believed to contain the concentrated essence of Quetzalcoatl's breath. Moctezuma would always drink the foam first, closing his eyes to better appreciate its delicate texture and the way it seemed to dissolve on his tongue like crystallized prayers, leaving only empty flavor behind. The gentle scraping of stone on stone, the soft splashing of liquid poured from height, the whispered prayers of servants who understood they were preparing not merely a drink, but a direct connection to the divine realm where Quetzalcoatl waited in eternal exile, having sacrificed his place in paradise so that humans might taste the food of the gods. The perfect temperature was achieved. Through careful timing, chocolate prepared at dawn would reach ideal serving temperature, By the time the morning ceremonies began, first lifted a golden vessel of chocolate to his lips. The conquistador, born in 1485 in the Spanish province of Extremadura, had traveled thousands of miles and witnessed countless wonders of the New World. But nothing had prepared him for this moment of profound disappointment. For this act of divine theft, Quetzalcoatl was banished from paradise, but humans gained access to the food of the gods. This creation myth infused every aspect of Aztec chocolate consumption with religious meaning. To drink chocolate was to participate in Quetzalcoatl's sacrifice, to taste the very substance that connected mortals to the divine realm. Aztec priests conducted elaborate chocolate ceremonies in the great temple of Tenochtitlan, where the bitter drink was offered to statue gods, while thousands of worshippers chanted prayers that rose with the steam from countless chocolate vessels. The temperature of Aztec chocolate was crucial to its spiritual properties. Aztec chocolate vessels were works of art in themselves, crafted by master potters who understood that their creations would hold divine liquid. These vessels, called chocolateras, were often decorated with intricate designs depicting the myths of Quetzalcoatl and the cosmic significance of cacao. Some were shaped like serpents, others like jaguars, each form chosen to enhance the spiritual power of the chocolate they contained. The froth that crowned properly prepared Aztec chocolate was considered the most sacred part of the drink. As Moctezuma's reign continued, his chocolate rituals became increasingly elaborate. The emperor's chocolate stores were housed in special chambers beneath the royal palace. When Spanish conquistadors would finally arrive in Tenochtitlan in 1519, the rhythm of chocolate preparation continued in the pre-dawn darkness of Tenochtitlan. Part 3. Spanish Conquest and Transformation in November of 1519. As autumn mist clung to the mountains surrounding Tenochtitlan, the chocolate that Moctezuma offered his Spanish guests was bitter beyond European comprehension. Yet even as recoiled from chocolate's taste. Part 4. European adoption in the autumn of 1660. A young Spanish princess named Maria Teresa stepped from her carriage at the gates of Versailles, performed in the quiet sanctuary of her private chambers, while the palace still drowsed in pre-dawn silence, where sweetened chocolate had evolved far beyond its humble origins in Mexican convents. Within months of her arrival at Versailles, other noble ladies began requesting their own morning chocolate services, documented chocolate's conquest of French society, with the sharp wit and careful observation that made her correspondence legendary. Early French chocolate was often prepared by servants who understood little about proper technique. French chocolate makers discovered that serving chocolate at precisely the right warmth enhanced both its flavor and its comforting properties. Too hot, and the delicate spices would become harsh. Too cool, and the chocolate would lose its ability to provide the gentle energy that made it so valuable as a morning beverage. Influenced by Britain's growing merchant class and their pragmatic approach to luxury, where French aristocrats treated chocolate as an art form worthy of lengthy contemplation. English merchants appreciated chocolate as an efficient source of energy that could sustain them through long days of business dealings. Shaped by the peninsula's long history of culinary sophistication and its connections to both Spanish and Ottoman trading networks, Cardinal Francesco Maria Brancaccio, who lived from 1592 to 1675, began experimenting with additions unknown in Spanish or French preparations. They incorporated jasmine flowers, creating chocolate with a floral complexity that seemed to capture Italian gardens in liquid form. Some Italian preparations included rosewater. Others featured cardamom, acquired through Venetian trade connections with the Ottoman Empire. Wrote one of the first European treatises specifically devoted to chocolate preparation, creating a drinking experience that emphasized chocolate's warming properties over its subtle flavors. This preference may have been influenced by Italy's coffee culture, which was simultaneously developing in the same cities where chocolate was gaining popularity, approaching the subject with the scholarly thoroughness that characterized Italian Renaissance learning, resulting in bitter, grainy drinks that disappointed nobles accustomed to Spanish refinement. But they served a broader social function than their continental counterparts. These establishments became informal business centers where merchants, ship captains, and traders could conduct negotiations over cups of chocolate, creating associations between chocolate and commerce that would profoundly influence its future development, offering aristocrats and wealthy merchants the opportunity to sample different chocolate preparations without the expense of maintaining their own chocolate servants. English chocolate makers developed techniques for preparing large quantities efficiently, creating chocolate drinks that were satisfying without requiring the elaborate individual attention demanded by French royal chocolate. This democratization of chocolate preparation made the beverage accessible to a broader range of English society than had been possible in other European countries. These establishments were quieter and more refined than their Spanish counterparts, designed to encourage contemplative conversation rather than boisterous commerce, but as a subject worthy of serious study, analyzing its properties, preparation methods, and appropriate occasions for consumption with the same rigor he applied to theological questions. But as French chocolate makers learned their craft, featured small private booths where customers could enjoy their chocolate in intimate settings. The proprietor, a former servant of Maria Theresa, who had learned chocolate preparation in the Spanish royal kitchens, offered over a dozen different chocolate preparations, each one designed to suit different moods and occasions. They began developing distinctly French approaches to chocolate preparation that emphasized smoothness and elegance over the robust intensity preferred in Spanish courts. Recorded his first chocolate experience in his diary entry for November 24th, 1664, to a coffee house to drink chocolat, very good. This brief notation marked the beginning of chocolate's integration into English daily life, though Pepys's initial enthusiasm would prove more complicated than his simple declaration suggested. In a letter dated February 1671, she wrote to her daughter, describing her own complicated relationship with chocolate. "I took chocolate night before last to digest my dinner. In order to have a good supper, I took some yesterday for nourishment so that I could fast until evening. What I find amusing about chocolate is that it acts according to the intentions of the one who takes it. The ritual spread through the palace like a gentle epidemic, transforming the aristocratic morning routine from simple bread and wine to elaborate chocolate ceremonies that could last for hours. Spanish royal chocolate was an art form in itself, prepared according to recipes that balanced sweetness with subtle spices in proportions guarded as carefully as state secrets. Maria Theresa's chocolate incorporated cinnamon from Ceylon, vanilla from New Spain, and sugar refined in the Caribbean colonies, creating a complexity that spoke of empire-spanning continents. Her Spanish servants, who had followed her to France, would arrive carrying silver trays laden with delicate porcelain cups, steaming pitchers of chocolate, and small silver spoons designed specifically for stirring the precious liquid to perfect smoothness. Born in 1638, Maria Theresa brought to her marriage with Louis XIV not only a political alliance between Spain and France, but also an intimate knowledge of chocolate's comforting properties that would transform the morning rituals of French aristocracy. Maria Theresa's daily chocolate ceremony began each morning at precisely 7 o'clock. The princess had learned her chocolate rituals in the Spanish court. Her influence over French chocolate culture was immediate and profound. Madame de Sévigné, the famous letter writer who lived from 1626 to 1696, Madame de Sévigné's letters reveal the gradual sophistication of French chocolate culture. The French innovation that would prove most enduring was their attention to temperature control. French chocolate houses, known as chocolateries, began appearing in Paris during the 1670s. The most famous Parisian chocolaterie, established on the Rue Saint-Antoine in 1674. Meanwhile, across the English Channel, chocolate was making its own unique conquest of British society. English chocolate culture developed differently from its French counterpart. English chocolate houses emerged in London during the 1670s. The preparation of chocolate in English establishments emphasized practicality over ceremony. Cardinal Brancaccio's The Chocolates, Patu Diatriba, represented chocolate's full intellectual acceptance into European culture. The cardinal approached chocolate not merely as a beverage. Italian chocolate makers, influenced by their country's sophisticated spice trade, the Italian approach to chocolate temperature differed markedly from French preferences. Italian chocolate was often served significantly warmer, almost hot. Venetian chocolate houses, established along the canals that connected the city to global trading networks, became centers for international merchants who gathered to sample chocolate preparations from throughout Europe while conducting business in multiple languages. These cosmopolitan establishments fostered the exchange of chocolate techniques and recipes that gradually standardized European chocolate preparation. German chocolate culture developed under the influence of both Italian sophistication and French refinement, but with distinctly Germanic attention to precision and consistency. German chocolate makers became renowned for their ability to replicate identical chocolate preparations day after day, creating the reliability that would later prove crucial for chocolate's transformation into a mass-market commodity. The soft whisper of chocolate being poured from precise heights, the murmured conversations of servants perfecting their techniques, had become the soundtrack of continental morning routines, a daily symphony that connected European nobility to distant cacao plantations through the simple act of lifting a cup of sweetened chocolate to appreciative lips. The natural fat content of cacao beans made chocolate drinks heavy and difficult to digest, while also limiting the ways chocolate could be prepared and consumed. Van Houten would begin with carefully roasted cacao beans, ground according to traditional methods, until they formed the smooth paste that chocolate makers had used for centuries. This paste was then placed in canvas bags and subjected to enormous hydraulic pressure. Cocoa butter, the extracted fat, proved valuable for pharmaceutical and cosmetic applications, while cocoa powder made possible the mass production of affordable chocolate drinks. More importantly, Van Houten's process provided the raw materials that would enable the next great leap in chocolate evolution, slowly and patiently applied over hours until golden cocoa butter began to seep through the canvas like amber tears. Traditional chocolate, even when sweetened and spiced according to the most refined European techniques, this cocoa powder, when mixed with hot water or milk, created a chocolate drink that was lighter, more digestible. The gentle grinding of mills, reducing pressed cacao cake to powder, the soft whisper of fine cocoa powder being sifted through silk screens. These sounds represented chocolate's entrance into the industrial age, where mechanical precision would replace the intuitive artistry that had guided chocolate making since Aztec times, and significantly less expensive than traditional chocolate preparations. Van Houten had democratized chocolate, transforming it from aristocratic luxury to middle-class comfort. Remained essentially a beverage for the wealthy, too rich and expensive for ordinary consumption. Austrian chocolate, influenced by the Habsburg dynasty's connections to Spanish royal culture, working alone in his workshop, surrounded by the gentle hissing of steam engines and the rhythmic clacking of mechanical gears. He developed a press capable of extracting much of the natural cocoa butter from ground cacao beans. This process, which he patented in 1828, separated chocolate into two distinct components, cocoa butter and cocoa powder, maintained closer ties to chocolate's original Spanish preparations than most other European variations. A Dutch chemist named Conrad Johannes van Houten made a discovery that would forever change humanity's relationship with chocolate. Born in 1801, Van Houten had inherited his father's chocolate business. But unlike previous generations of chocolate makers who relied on ancient grinding techniques, he possessed a restless mechanical mind that saw possibilities where others saw only tradition. Merchants traveling between cities carried recipes and techniques. Each morning, he would arrive before dawn to tend the coal-fired boilers that powered his experimental machinery, adjusting pressure gauges and temperature, controls with the patient precision of someone who understood that innovation required countless small failures before achieving success. Morning chocolate ceremonies had become as essential to noble routine as evening banquets, creating a daily ritual that connected European elites to the global trading networks that supplied their luxury, gradually standardizing preparation methods while preserving regional variations that reflected local tastes and available ingredients. Viennese chocolate houses, established during the 1680s, offered chocolate preparations that emphasized the spices and techniques originally developed in Spanish colonial convents. It marked chocolate's transformation from indigenous sacred beverage to international luxury commodity, a change that would prove crucial for chocolate's next evolutionary phase. In the quiet morning chambers of European palaces, where aristocrats sipped their carefully prepared chocolate while the world awakened around them, chocolate was learning to speak the language of commerce that would eventually carry it far beyond the confines of royal courts into the daily lives of ordinary people throughout the world. The gradual spread of chocolate throughout European capitals created a network of chocolate knowledge that transcended national boundaries. By the end of the 17th century, chocolate had established itself as a permanent feature of European aristocratic life. The European adoption of chocolate represented more than simple culinary fashion. The gentle sounds of European chocolate preparation's silver spoons clinking against porcelain cups. Part 5. Industrial Revolution in the year 1828. In a modest workshop in Amsterdam, where winter light filtered through frost-etched windows, Van Houten's workshop occupied 3 floors of a narrow building along one of Amsterdam's quieter canals. The problem that obsessed Van Houten was one that had frustrated chocolate makers for centuries. Van Houten's solution emerged from months of methodical experimentation with hydraulic pressure. The extraction process itself was a meditation in mechanical precision. What remained after pressing was a dry cake of compressed cacao solids that could be ground into fine powder. The sound of von Houten's workshop became a new music in the world of chocolate, the steady rhythm of hydraulic presses. Von Houten's innovation created two industries where previously there had been one. In Bristol, England, Joseph Fry had inherited a chocolate business established by his grandfather in 1761. Born in 1795 into a family of Quaker chocolatiers, Fry possessed both the moral earnestness of his religious tradition and the practical innovation that characterized British manufacturing during the Industrial Revolution. Working in a factory that occupied several buildings along Bristol's busy waterfront, Fry began experimenting with Van Houten's new cocoa powder in the late 1840s, creating a distinctly British approach to chocolate manufacturing that emphasized quality, consistency, and moral purpose. John Cadbury, born in 1801, opened his chocolate shop in Birmingham in 1824. But John Cadbury quickly recognized the potential of Fry's innovations in solid chocolate. By the 1850s, Cadbury was producing his own chocolate bars, developing recipes that emphasized smoothness and subtle flavor over the more robust taste that characterized some competitors' products. Who had to ensure consistent quality across thousands of individual chocolate bars or pounds of cocoa powder, which made possible the efficient distribution of chocolate products across vast distances. Baker's chocolate could be shipped from Massachusetts to customers in California, maintaining its quality during weeks of travel in railroad cars that experienced extreme temperature variations. The constant rumble of roasting machines, the rhythmic pounding of grinding mills. Learning to recognize by sight and smell when beans had reached optimal flavor development. Others specialized in the delicate process of tempering chocolate, manipulating temperature and timing to create chocolate with the proper texture and appearance. The hissing of steam-powered equipment. Progressive marked chocolate's transition from special occasion treat to everyday comfort. Children could enjoy chocolate as a special treat. Families could share chocolate during evening gatherings. And workers could carry chocolate bars as convenient sources of energy during long shifts in factories and mills. By the 1870s, chocolate bars were affordable enough for working families to purchase regularly. These jobs, while demanding, offered more security and better working conditions than many alternatives available to working-class families during the Industrial Revolution. While cocoa powder had become a staple in middle-class kitchens throughout Europe and America, becoming more efficient and capable of producing ever larger quantities of chocolate products. But the fundamental transformation had already occurred. Chocolate had completed its journey from sacred Aztec beverage to industrial commodity, ready for the next phase of its evolution. In the hands of Swiss innovators, who would perfect chocolate's ultimate expression, and the clatter of packaging machinery combined to create a symphony of mechanized chocolate making that could be heard for blocks around major factories. Baker's mill developed quality control procedures that involved testing samples from each batch. Steam-powered ships reduced the time required to transport cacao beans from tropical plantations to European and American factories, while improved preservation techniques ensured that beans arrived in better condition than had been possible during the age of sailing ships, maintaining detailed records of ingredients and processing conditions, and training workers to recognize the signs of properly processed chocolate. Initially selling traditional drinking chocolate to customers who appreciated his family's reputation for honest dealing and quality products. influenced by the practical needs of a rapidly expanding nation and the entrepreneurial spirit that characterized American commerce. Walter Baker, born in 1792, inherited a chocolate mill in Dorchester, Massachusetts, that had been grinding chocolate since 1765. Under Baker's management, with multi-story buildings designed specifically for chocolate production, these facilities featured temperature-controlled rooms for different stages of chocolate processing, machinery arranged in logical sequences that minimized handling, and storage areas designed to protect raw materials and finished products from moisture and contamination. The mill became one of America's first large-scale chocolate manufacturers. Fry's breakthrough came through patient observation of chocolate's behavior under different conditions. His mill operated with water-powered machinery that could process enormous quantities of cacao beans, creating chocolate products that were consistent in quality and affordable for middle-class American families. The mill's location on the Neponset River provided reliable power for machinery that operated with rhythmic precision day after day. His factory, established in a former malt house on Crooked Lane, provided employment for dozens of Birmingham residents who learned chocolate-making skills that would serve them throughout their lives. The factory operated according to Quaker principles, with regular hours, fair wages, and working conditions that prioritized worker safety and comfort. He noticed that cocoa powder, when mixed with cocoa butter and sugar in specific proportions, Fry's workers had to learn to judge the proper temperature for mixing ingredients, develop techniques for molding chocolate into uniform shapes, and perfect cooling processes that would create chocolate with the right texture and appearance. Each step required patient refinement, with batches often discarded when they failed to meet Fry's exacting standards. Created a paste that could be molded and would maintain its shape when cooled. The grinding of sugar and cocoa powder created a steady background hum that could be heard through the factory's stone walls. The stirring of chocolate in large heated vats produced a distinctive splashing sound that workers learned to interpret, knowing by ear when chocolate had reached the proper consistency for molding. This observation led to countless hours of experimentation in the factory's testing kitchen. But even these humble beginnings represented a revolution in chocolate consumption. For the first time in history, chocolate could be carried in a pocket, eaten without preparation, and shared among friends without requiring special equipment or serving vessels, where Fry and his assistants methodically tested different ratios of ingredients until they achieved the perfect balance. The creation of the first modern chocolate bar in 1847 required innovations in every aspect of chocolate production. The Fry factory developed its own rhythms and sounds that became as familiar to Bristol residents as church bells. Fry's chocolate bars were initially simple affairs-plane chocolate, molded into rectangular shapes and wrapped in paper printed with the family name. The success of Fry's chocolate bars inspired other Quaker families to enter the chocolate business. Cadbury's approach to chocolate reflected his Quaker beliefs about the dignity of labor and the importance of treating workers fairly. The Cadbury factory specialized in drinking chocolate. Across the Atlantic, American chocolate manufacturing was developing along different lines. Baker's approach to chocolate manufacturing emphasized standardization and efficiency over artisanal craftsmanship. The standardization of chocolate production created new challenges for manufacturers. American chocolate manufacturing was also influenced by the country's growing rail network. The Industrial Revolution's impact on chocolate extended beyond manufacturing techniques to encompass every aspect of the chocolate trade. Chocolate factories themselves became marvels of industrial architecture. The sounds of industrial chocolate production created a new auditory landscape in manufacturing cities. Workers in these early chocolate factories developed specialized skills that reflected chocolate's unique properties and requirements. Some became experts in judging the proper roast for cacao beans. The transformation of chocolate from handcrafted luxury to machine-made commodity represented more than technological. This democratization of chocolate consumption created new social rituals around chocolate that transcended class boundaries. The industrial production of chocolate also created employment opportunities for thousands of workers who found steady wages in chocolate factories. As the 19th century progressed, the machinery of chocolate production continued to evolve. Part 6: Swiss Innovation and Milk Chocolate in the Alpine valleys of Switzerland, where mountain streams provide crystalline water and the air carries the scent of meadow flowers. Chocolate found its ultimate expression through the patient dedication of artisans who understood that perfection required not speed, but time. The year 1819 marked a quiet revolution when Francois Keller, born in 1796, established the first mechanized chocolate factory in the picturesque town of Vevey. A young candle maker, born in 1836, who married the daughter of Keller's business partner, became the site of one of chocolate history's most patient quests. Beginning in 1867, Peter embarked on a 7-year journey to create something that had never existed before: chocolate combined with milk. Peter and spent countless hours in Peter's workshop. When Peter achieved a mixture that combined the richness of chocolate with the gentle sweetness of milk in perfect harmony, the resulting chocolate was revolutionary, smoother than any chocolate previously created, with a flavor that was both familiar and entirely new. Rudolf Lindt, born in 1855, inherited a small chocolate factory from his father, but possessed an ambition that far exceeded his modest beginnings. Lindt was obsessed with texture. He called his technique conching, named after the shell-shaped mixing vessels he used, and discovered that the prolonged stirring not only improved texture, but also developed chocolate-esque flavor in ways that shorter processing could never achieve. Believing that truly perfect chocolate should melt smoothly on the tongue, without any trace of grittiness or unpleasant aftertaste, requiring enormous patience and precise control. Where workers tended machines that operated continuously for 72 to 96 hours per batch, the sound of conching was hypnotic, a steady, rhythmic grinding that never varied in tempo, creating a background drone that workers found both soothing and energizing. The rooms were kept at carefully controlled temperatures, and workers learned to judge chocolate's progress by changes in sound, aroma, and appearance that occurred over the course of the long conching cycle. Chocolate was placed in large stone vessels equipped with heavy rollers that moved back and forth through the mixture for days at a time. The process generated gentle heat through friction, slowly evaporating moisture and volatile compounds while developing the complex flavor compounds that gave Lindt chocolate its distinctive character. Milk chocolate possessed chocolate-esque depth while offering an accessibility that made it immediately appealing to consumers who had found traditional dark chocolate too intense. Mixing different proportions of chocolate, milk, powder, and sugar operated with Swiss precision that became legendary throughout the chocolate industry. The mixing of ingredients produced a particular rhythm as paddles stirred through increasingly thick chocolate paste. The grinding mills that reduced sugar crystals to powder created a steady humming that could be heard throughout the factory. When a chocolate mixing machine was accidentally left running over a weekend, when workers returned on Monday morning, they found that the chocolate had been stirred continuously for 72 hours, transforming its texture into something unprecedented chocolate, so smooth it seemed to dissolve instantly upon contact with the tongue. The tempering process, where finished chocolate was carefully heated and cooled to achieve proper texture, required constant attention and created the gentle sounds of workers testing temperatures and adjusting equipment. Every step of production was carefully controlled, from the temperature at which ingredients were mixed to the exact timing of each processing stage. Workers learned to judge milk chocolate's progress by subtle visual and auditory cues, developing skills that took years to master, testing temperatures and processing times until they achieved the perfect balance. Each experiment required careful documentation with detailed notes about ingredients, temperatures, timing, and results that filled notebook after notebook. The challenge seemed simple. Enough milk and chocolate were both beloved foods, but the reality proved extraordinarily complex. Peter had noticed that his candle business was declining as gas lighting became more common, and he began looking for new opportunities that could utilize his understanding of manufacturing processes. Nestled along the shores of Lake Geneva, Kaler had spent 4 years in Turin. Fresh milk contained too much water. A German-Swiss pharmacist born in 1814, who had developed a process for creating powdered milk for infant nutrition. Milk powder removed the water that had frustrated Peter's experiments while preserving milk's essential flavors and nutritional properties. The two men began collaborating in 1875, combining Peter's chocolate expertise with milk processing knowledge, causing chocolate to seize into unworkable lumps. When he tried removing water by boiling milk, the resulting flavor was unpleasant and the texture remained problematic. Month after month, Peter filled his workshop with failed batches of grainy, bitter mixtures that bore no resemblance to the smooth chocolate he envisioned. Learning chocolate-making techniques from Italian masters who had perfected their craft over generations. Rhythmic grinding that echoed across the valley like a mechanical heartbeat. He developed standardized recipes that could be reproduced exactly day after day, creating chocolate with consistent flavor and texture that customers could rely upon. His attention to detail was legendary. He personally inspected every shipment of cacao beans, rejecting any that failed to meet his exacting standards, and he trained his workers to recognize the signs of properly processed chocolate at every stage of production. The water wheel that powered his equipment turned with Swiss precision, providing steady, reliable energy that allowed chocolate to be processed with a uniformity impossible to achieve by hand. Workers in Kaler's factory learned to listen to their machinery, recognizing by subtle changes in sound when adjustments were needed to maintain perfect processing conditions. But unlike his teachers, who relied entirely on hand methods passed down through family traditions, powered by the reliable energy of Swiss mountain streams, his factory, a modest stone building that harmonized with the alpine architecture surrounding it, could grind cacao beans with unprecedented consistency. The sound of Kaler's machinery was unlike anything heard in chocolate production before. Kaler's innovations extended beyond machinery to encompass every aspect of chocolate production. The success of Kaler's factory inspired other Swiss entrepreneurs to enter the chocolate business. But none would prove more important than Peter's workshop, located in Vevey, not far from Kaler's factory. Peter's early experiments were disasters. The solution came through an unlikely partnership with Henry. The creation of milk chocolate required extraordinary patience and precision. The breakthrough finally came in 1875. Peter's milk chocolate factory, established to produce this new confection on a commercial scale. The process of making milk chocolate created its own distinctive sounds that became familiar throughout Vevey. Meanwhile, in Bern, another Swiss innovator was perfecting chocolate's ultimate refinement. The discovery that would make Lindt famous occurred by accident in 1879. Lindt immediately recognized the significance of this accident and began systematic experiments to replicate and improve the process. The conching process became Lindt's signature innovation. Lindt's conching rooms were temples of mechanical meditation. Philippe Suchard, born in 1797, contributed another crucial innovation to Swiss chocolate making through his attention to marketing and branding. But equally important was Suchard's understanding of chocolate as a source of comfort and pleasure rather than mere nutrition. His marketing emphasized chocolate's ability to provide moments of happiness and satisfaction, positioning chocolate consumption as a small daily luxury that ordinary people could afford and enjoy. Suchard recognized that chocolate's transformation from luxury item to everyday pleasure required not just improved production techniques and filled chocolates with a sophistication that represented the culmination of chocolate's evolution from Aztec sacred beverage to modern confection. Chocolate had found its ultimate expression. Swiss chocolatiers had discovered that the secret of perfect chocolate lay not in rushing production, but in allowing time itself to become an ingredient, patiently transforming simple cacao beans into confections that could provide comfort and pleasure to people throughout the world. The gentle sounds of Swiss chocolate production, the steady rhythm of conching machines, the essence of chocolate remained unchanged. Each chocolate bar still began with cacao beans grown in tropical regions during times of war. Chocolate provided comfort to soldiers far from home, its concentrated energy and familiar taste offering psychological sustenance that transcended mere nutrition. During times of peace, chocolate became a medium for artistic expression, with confectioners creating elaborate sculptures and delicate bonbons that elevated chocolate from simple candy to edible art, with small-scale chocolatiers taking control of every step in chocolate production from bean selection through final packaging. These modern chocolate artisans worked with the same patient attention to detail that had characterized Swiss chocolate pioneers, but with access to scientific understanding that allowed them to optimize flavor development with unprecedented precision, where indigenous farmers tended trees that were direct descendants of the same species that had provided sacred drink to Maya priests and Aztec emperors, experimenting with single-origin cacao beans that expressed the unique characteristics of specific regions and even individual farms. Researchers identified compounds that explained why chocolate had provided comfort and pleasure to humans for millennia, validating what chocolate lovers had always known intuitively, that chocolate possessed genuine power to improve both physical and emotional states. This renaissance of chocolate appreciation echoed the reverence that ancient Maya and Aztec civilizations had shown for cacao's complex character. Chocolate's essential appeal remained as mysterious as it had been to the first Olmec priests who transformed bitter seeds into sacred drink. The alchemy that occurred when cacao met sugar, when grinding transformed beans into smooth paste, When tempering created chocolate's distinctive snap and shine, these processes could be measured and controlled, but their magic could never be fully explained. The patient process of fermentation, drying, and roasting that prepared cacao beans for processing followed techniques that would have been recognizable to chocolate makers from centuries past. Concerns about sustainable farming practices led to renewed attention to the conditions under which cacao was grown and harvested, creating direct connections between chocolate consumers and the farmers who tended cacao trees in distant tropical regions, establishing techniques and standards that would guide chocolate production throughout the 20th century and beyond, creating emotional connections that would last throughout their lives. Families gathered around chocolate desserts during holidays and special occasions. Small chocolatiers continued to work in the artisanal tradition, hand-tempering chocolate and creating unique flavor combinations that honored chocolate's complex character. These artisans maintained the patient, meditative approach to chocolate making that had characterized the craft since its earliest days, proving that mechanization could coexist with traditional methods. Continuing traditions of communal chocolate consumption that echoed the ceremonial gatherings of ancient Mesoamerica. In their patient workshops, where the rhythm of machinery marked time like mechanical prayers, Swiss chocolatiers had completed chocolate's long journey from bitter Aztec drink to the smooth, sweet comfort that continues to provide solace to people everywhere. The quiet hum of grinding mills, the soft footsteps of workers monitoring temperature-sensitive processes had become the soundtrack of chocolate's final transformation. The gentle rhythms of conching machines and grinding mills had become the heartbeat of a truly global industry. To encompass chocolate production on scales that would have seemed impossible to earlier generations. Factories in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and Bournville, England, processed tons of cacao beans daily, their machinery operating with the precision of Swiss timepieces, but the capacity of American industry. Chocolate, which had begun its journey in the misty highlands of ancient Mesoamerica as a bitter drink reserved for gods and emperors, had transformed into humanity's most democratic luxury, a comfort available to children and adults, rich and poor, in virtually every corner of the civilized world. Swiss factories combined mechanical precision with artisanal attention to detail. Master roasters learned to judge cacao bean development by subtle changes in color and aroma, adjusting time and temperature for different types of beans and desired flavor profiles. Conching specialists developed an almost mystical ability to recognize when chocolate had achieved perfect texture and flavor development, often working by sound and intuition as much as by mechanical measurement, producing chocolate that was both consistent in quality and superior in flavor to anything previously available, creating chocolate that commanded premium prices in markets throughout Europe and America. Swiss chocolate became synonymous with excellence, establishing a reputation that would endure for generations and influence chocolate making throughout the world, but also new approaches to packaging and distribution that would make chocolate appealing to broader audiences. Suchard's factory in Neuchâtel became renowned for its colorful packaging and consistent quality. The Swiss chocolate industry that emerged during the late 19th century created a model for chocolate production that would influence the entire world. Swiss chocolate workers developed specialized skills that reflected the unique requirements of each stage in chocolate production. The Swiss approach to chocolate manufacturing emphasized quality over quantity. By the 1890s, Swiss chocolate factories were producing milk chocolate dark chocolate in the quiet valleys of Switzerland, where alpine streams provided power for machinery and mountain air-cooled chocolate to perfect consistency. The legacy of Swiss chocolate innovation extended far beyond Switzerland's borders, closing modern global journey as the 20th century dawned across chocolate factories from Switzerland to Pennsylvania. The mechanization that had begun with Van Houten's hydraulic press and reached perfection in Swiss conching rooms now expanded, yet even as chocolate production became increasingly mechanized, the democratization of chocolate consumption created new rituals and traditions that spanned cultures and continents. Children learned to associate chocolate with celebration and comfort. Chocolate's journey through the 20th century reflected humanity's own technological and social evolution. The mass production techniques that made chocolate affordable also preserved its capacity for individual craftsmanship. As the 21st century unfolded, chocolate faced new challenges and opportunities that would have been unimaginable to earlier generations. The farm-to-bar movement that emerged in the early 2000s represented chocolate's return to its artisanal roots. Modern chocolate makers rediscovered flavor compounds and preparation techniques that had been lost during chocolate's industrialization. The scientific understanding of chocolate that developed during the late 20th and early 21st centuries revealed the biochemical basis for chocolate's remarkable effects on human mood and well-being. Yet, despite all scientific analysis and technological advancement, in chocolate shops and factories around the world, the ancient rhythms of chocolate making continued. From farmers tending cacao trees under tropical canopies to confectioners crafting elaborate bonbons in temperature-controlled workshops, this vast network of chocolate production and distribution created connections between cultures and continents that transcended political boundaries and language barriers. The sound of grinding, refined over centuries but fundamentally unchanged. The gentle sounds of chocolate production continue grinding, mills processing cacao beans, releasing flavors that have comforted humans for thousands of years, and the endless quest for comfort and pleasure in an uncertain world. From the temple complexes of ancient Maya cities to the climate-controlled factories of the modern era, chocolate has provided a constant source of solace and satisfaction that has enriched human life in ways both simple and profound. We participate in a ritual that transcends time and culture. Each bite of chocolate connects us to the sacred groves where cacao first grew wild, to the patient hands that first ground bitter seeds into nourishing drink, to the innovative minds that transformed chocolate from luxury to everyday pleasure. Conching machines, developing flavor through patient stirring, tempering equipment, creating chocolate with perfect texture and appearance. May your mind find peace and your dreams take you to places even time cannot touch. Until next time, sleep well and dream deeply. These sounds, which would have been familiar to chocolatiers from centuries past, maintain the continuity that connects modern chocolate making to its ancient origins, discovering connections between their favorite candy bars and ancient civilizations that had vanished long before their own cultures emerged. These educational moments created appreciation for chocolate's remarkable journey and the countless individuals who had contributed to its development over millennia. Still marked the transformation of humble seeds into objects of desire. In the modern world, represented the culmination of humanity's longest and most successful culinary collaboration. Every chocolate bar contained the knowledge and innovation of countless generations, from indigenous farmers who had first cultivated cacao to Swiss engineers who had perfected conching machines to modern food scientists who continued to explore chocolate's possibilities. The patient stirring that developed chocolate's flavor still required human attention and judgment, connecting modern chocolatiers to the unnamed Maya artisans who had first discovered chocolate's potential. The global chocolate industry that emerged from these humble beginnings employed millions of people worldwide. Children in classrooms around the world learned about chocolate's history, the chocolate that filled store shelves and kitchen pantries. As night settles over chocolate factories and confectionaries around the globe, in the quiet moments when chocolate melts on the tongue, the story of chocolate is ultimately the story of human ingenuity, patience, and so, dear dreamer, as the echoes of history fade and the quiet of the night settles in,